So, welcome to part 2 in this series.
And in this part, we're going to move away from predictions and prophecies. We're going to talk about how to read scientific texts.
Because there is a difference between reading a fictional book, which we read from beginning to the end, and a scientific paper, which requires a totally different set of skills to read this paper. We are going to mention a few of them here. As you can see, there are skimming, which we in Swedish will call skumläsa. Scanning, where you sort of scan the text to find something that you're actually looking for. Maybe something that you have caught onto, a thread of sorts. Snatch and grab reading has to do with sort of finding the inference between different ideas and maybe the way the text is constructed. Inference means slutledningsförmåga. So you can sort of see, they mentioned this in the beginning, they mention it here, and at the end you can sort of make a deduction. What is this text about?
Right. And we're going to give you more examples of how to read a scientific paper. How do we approach a scientific text when we find one? We start by looking at the abstract. That gives us the why, the purpose of the text, sort of a summary of what it is about. And then we look at the conclusion, because that gives us the how. How did they come to this conclusion? The methods, the results, the analysis, and so on. By doing this and kind of skipping the body part of the text, we can make a quick decision if this seems like something that we need to dive further into, or if it's something that might not be exactly what we were looking for.
So,
how do we analyze a scientific paper?
we decide what is the content of the paper. What kind of analysis is the author using? This is often found in the method.
Is the author able to prove his or her hypothesis? And what kind of examples can you give of that? And also, it's important to remember that research is building knowledge on previous science. And the goal of a scientific research is to test your hypothesis through research.
And in this case, your research is going to be by looking at different sources and pitting them against each other, or maybe finding the same conclusions found in these different sources.
One thing that will make this easier for you is the fact that scientific papers is almost always based on the same structure.
So when you start to look at your sources, for instance, an article, take a few moments before reading text to preview it. This can help you to tackle this text. This is what is called skimming, skumläsa. You try to find out information about the text beforehand. What genre is this? What paper was it published in, for instance? And other things like that.
And you're probably already very skilled at this sort of approach to reading scientific texts since your gymnasiearbete. So feel free to ask us questions if you want to know more about these skills. And that leads us to scientific writing. Scientific writing follows a distinct structure, sort of like laying a puzzle. So you don't have to kind of invent the wheel every time. And of course, it should be well substantiated with sources, and it should show that you know how to find information in a complex information flow. You need to have search skills.
We know that you have worked with your gymnasiearbeten, and you're good at that, but we're going to introduce what we're calling the 7 S and C skills. As you can see, there are 7 of them here in the list. We have search, we have collect, sift, sort, structure, systemize, and collocate.
Right, and we're going to look a bit closer at the first 3, search, collect, and sift. Imagine you are in a boat on a sea, throwing out a large fishing net over the web, in this analogy, and then you have to go through your catch. You want to keep the big fish, and you want to kind of put the small fish back. Of course, this method of searching is different from your standard Google search. It requires you to use source checking skills. You want to do a wide search, and collect a lot of information and then sift through them to see what is important, what do I want to keep. So in this stage, when you are sifting through your collected material, you're trying to find as many sources as possible that you can rely on.
Then we're going to look at the next three, which is sort, structure, and systemize. At this stage, you apply your overall question, din frågeställning, or focus on your remaining sources. You're going to try to see them through the lens of your thesis or maybe your program. You're going to group the ideas together by their importance and relevance to you. And in this stage, you will start to see which sources will support your case or not.
And then we have the last one, collocate, sammanställa. This last stage of skill set is to collocate your sources. And when you've done this, and you've kind of systemized them and grouped them and everything, now you're ready to start your writing process. So all of this is before you start writing.
And also remember to write down your sources.
Yes, always write down your sources from the beginning. That will help you in the end. Okay, so following the 7 skills of S and C, we have the 5 skills of T.
That rhymed. Okay, these skills has to do with what you're actually going to produce. So to produce, you're going to write a scientific paper. And while you do this, you're also going to be thinking about a person in the future who will read this.
Right, because in the end, it's still going to be a warning.
So we have to remember that we might point out certain things that this future person might or should be made aware of. We might want to profile it from our program. So if you're reading estate or technology or economy, you're going to sort of make your warning be a part of your profile on your program.
So let's look at them a bit closer. The first ones, produce, point out, and profile. This is, of course, the actual writing of your paper or your warning to the future, in which you point out your findings by profiling your academic field or your program.
Okay, so we're going to talk about these two, prioritize and present. Now, in writing tradition, there is a very famous saying, to kill your darlings. What does that mean, Emma?
Right. I think as an author, you probably would experience having written parts of your text that you really, really like, maybe even love, but that you in the end has to discard because they don't bring anything new to the table. They don't make the story flow. Right. So in scientific writing, this is kind of the same. You might have parts of your text that you really like, but they don't add to your analysis or your conclusion, and they don't really fit. And so you might have to be prepared to sort of kill your darlings.
Right. And this is, of course, you have maybe 2 sources that say the same thing. Then you prioritize the one that you feel maybe you could rely more on, or maybe has more content or something like that. And then you can say that I'm going to choose this one over this one. Or maybe in your text, as you said, that you have to make a prioritization about the text and how long it's going to be, for instance.
And then, of course, present, the last and final stage. And in your case, with this course, you are going to go through this present stage a lot because of the drafts that you're going to write and the response you're going to give on others' texts, and then rewrite and draft again, and so on and so on. And this is really good. It gives you a chance to really sort of
refine
those skills of T's and S's.
Right.
C's.
And you might even help each other to kill darlings.
Yeah. So that's what you're going to be looking for in each other's texts, the darlings.